Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Senior Living Sales and Marketing Podcast. Just as a reminder, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Please download and rate the podcast to make it easier for others to find. You can also sign up for our newsletter at www.seniorlivingsalesandmarketing.com. And also check out our sister podcast at thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. Today, I want to welcome Marty Ramseck with PI Midlantic to the show. We did another show for the Business of Business podcast talking about the predictive index and how it relates to turnover in general. But as me and Marty talked further, I felt like it would be good to do an episode that was focused strictly on the senior living sales and marketing teams. Marty has a very extensive background in senior living and in sales, and then I think that the sales process, and that's one reason why I started this podcast, is that the sales and marketing process has become a much more important function in the senior living industry now more than ever, with the economic environment, with the affordability issues, with the competition that's coming online, both other senior living providers and at-home care. It's more important now that when we do capture lead, that we're able to do everything that we can do to possibly close that. And I'm not talking about being a used car salesman. My philosophy is always building relationships, but I think we have to hire the right people that aren't used car salesmen, that know how to build relationships with prospects in order to increase our occupancy. So having said all that, Marty, welcome back. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me again.
Thanks, Troy. Great to be here.
If you don't mind, why don't you just tell the audience just a little bit about your senior living history and just a little bit about the predictive index as well as PI Midlantic.
Yeah, my senior living history goes back to 2002, where I was VP of sales for Sunrise Senior Living, which was at that time nationwide, but now it's an international company. Has many senior livings not only in America but throughout in Europe and Canada. And then I spent about 10 years with a company called LivHOME, where we did in-home care versus assisted living care, but we did in-home care, custodial care for seniors. And then 2 years at Vintage Senior Living, again, a high-end senior living on the West Coast, California and Washington. And so over that period of time, I have about, I'd say 15 years in the senior living industry, experiencing both in-home and assisted living care. A little bit about Predictive Index. Predictive Index is a behavioral assessment that looks at a person's behavioral strengths in terms of what do they bring behaviorally to a company, in terms of the behaviors that you'll see in that person. And then from that, you can understand what motivates them, the motivating needs, better ways to communicate with them, better ways to coach and train them once you understand what their behavioral needs are and wants are that way. PI Midlantic is a consulting company based out of Annapolis. We're in Maryland and Delaware and Pennsylvania, along with Northern and Southern California. And my job is to work with companies and consult companies, help them with Predictive Index and help them get better results using this behavioral assessment tool to hire better, coach, train, and engage your employees in a more productive way to get, at the end of the day, get better results.
Well, I think that your not only your background but your product, it's a very good combination for the senior living sales and marketing teams today. So let's talk a little bit about taking the predictive index. Just can you kind of explain what that process is? If I if I called you today and said, you know what, I'm fixing to hire Joe or Sally, and I really would like to do the predictive index on them. What does that process look like?
Yeah, it's a very simple process. It's a process of we send them out. Everything's done online, and we would basically email them a link to complete the predictive index. Generally speaking, it's a real short assessment. That's one of the values of predictive index. It doesn't take the person who takes it a lot of time to do. It takes about 6 minutes to complete. And from that, we'll understand their behavioral needs. The predictive index measures 4 behavioral needs of a person. It measures their dominance, which is their drive to control or insert influence in one's environment. It also measures their extroversion, which is the drive for people and interacting with people. It measures patience, which is the drive for stability and familiarity with one's environment. And it measures formality, which is the drive for detail and to do things perfectly. And in each one of those drives, we'll determine if they have a high dominance, which is more a drive for seeking challenges, or low dominance, which is more seeking harmony, and high extroversion, which is seeking people, low extroversion, which is more task focused, high patience, which is more process oriented, low patience, they're more variety in terms of like to juggle their tasks throughout the day, and then formality, that you can determine how much detail they're into and how much rules and processes they're looking at versus how much they're looking at more general guidelines in terms of how they like to be worked with.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line between being an overly aggressive salesperson versus being someone that knows how to pursue prospects and do thoughtful follow-up. Will the predictive index kind of help separate those two individuals?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think what we've seen, what you see with predictive index is that you're going to see in the senior living business, you're going to find people that do well or high with extroversion, which means they connect very, very well with people. They're low in patience, which means they're very results oriented. Their some detail, but not over the top, where you don't want somebody really getting behind and falling in love with a CRM system and doing that all day. But the key that you want to see, you see in senior living, it's probably changed most over the last 15 years, is the dominance. And dominance is the drive for results. It's the drive for challenging. It's the drive to get people to take the next step. So when I first started in senior living back in 2002, you didn't need a lot of dominance in your salespeople because there was not as much competition. There wasn't as much options. So you're looking for more of we would consider the natural, more of a farmer, person that worked well with people, didn't push them too hard because there was not a lot of other competition out there. Today, you're seeing that dominance drive. You're needing more dominance because there is more competition. You need to drive them a little bit more for the next steps. And it's also the drive to control. And today, you need somebody that really controls the sales process in terms of getting people to take the next steps and keeping themselves in control of what's happening next in the sales process. So that is a key behavior that you want to see in your salespeople, but at the same time, it can't be over the top in terms of too controlling or too driven because you're going to push people away. But you have to kind of manage that a little bit where you do have somebody that can drive somebody to the next steps, control the next steps to keep them looking at your assisted living or your home care based upon keeping them in line in your sales process.
Okay, that's great because that's I do a lot of mystery shopping, and that's, I guess I see both extremes. There's the process that nobody's in control over, that it seems like that you are always having to run them down, versus the ones that they are just they're basically just in your face wanting you to sign up.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's not that they really care about you, and which kind of leads into the next part. I feel that you've got to have the drive, you got to have the organization, you have to know how to prospect, you have to understand not everybody's going to be ready to make that decision today. Not everybody's going to like your company, your community. You're going to lose some people because of that. You have to be able to accept the no's. But I think another important quality is empathy, and that is that we need empathy for the family, for the prospective resident, and the fact that their stuff is not in their car. They're not gonna walk in and you're gonna sign them up and you're gonna move them in today. It's a process. We have to, like a farmer, you have to sow the seed, you have to maintain it, and then you reap your harvest. And sometimes, I think, especially in this our world of instant gratification, I say, Marty, are you ready? Are you ready? Here's a paper. Let's sign up. And if you don't, well, you're off my radar, and you're moving. I'm moving on. And there are a lot of studies out there that show that it can take between 8 to 12 touches during the sales process in order to make a client. And a higher dollar sales tend to be at the higher end of that. So will the predictive index kind of help us sort out this empathy factor, somebody that's going to be able to sit down and have a true conversation with Marty and his family to find out, what brought you in here today? Are you a good fit? I'm not scared to tell you that, we may not be the best fit for you, but I know some people that I can help place you. Will the predictive index help us in that respect as well?
Yeah, it would help. Predictive index does measure behaviorally how empathetic behaviorally a person is, and there's certain drives, and that's kind of the extroversion drive. They tend to be a lot more empathetic, a lot more caring. So predictive index really does a good job of understanding how empathetic a person is. But I think we're also too is also a person really understanding the sales process also, and knowing a couple things. Number one, that your community or your home care company, they're not for everyone. Everyone's not for you. There's you have to understand who the right people are for you from that standpoint. Two is coaching salespeople to really work in the best interest of the customer. Are they doing the right thing? Because that's what they're really judging that salesperson on is, are you working in the best interest of the customer? And three, and I think you brought up a good point of the steps in the sales process, of really understanding good, what we call buyer-seller alignment, and being with the seller where they're at in the process. Some people are very urgent and they're looking to move in ASAP. They have to do that, and working with that person. At the same time, people are just generally maybe beginning to look and beginning the process. But I think where most salespeople get themselves in trouble is they're not aligned with the buyer. They're trying to close too soon or not enough in that process, and that really upsets the buyer. But to be aligned and take them through the steps and kind of controlling those steps, but take them to the appropriate next steps in the sales process, knowing that this is going to take maybe several steps to get them to move in or get them to become a client of your home care company, but be aligned with them in that process. And you'll generally get those people because your alignment makes the sales process go very smoothly for you and for the prospective buyer. But to your original question, yeah, predictive index does measure empathy. It does measure how a person will interact with somebody. But also, I think it is in terms of a salesperson understanding good selling and understanding the sales process, that it's going to take steps and be aligned with them where they're at in that sales process.
Right, and you bring up a good point about trying to meet the prospect where they're at, and we see that a lot as well, that when you walk in, they want to start at the beginning of time and tell you what, this is an apartment, you're going to get to live here, we're going to feed you, and what they don't understand a lot is that these most, not everyone, but I would say that most prospects and their families have already checked out your community and your competition long before they come in. And so that's why it's good to ask some general questions about, where they are in the search process, what has instigated this, why are you even out looking, to try to find, where they are and how much research that they've done. I think another big part of this process is, and why I feel it's so important on this empathy is talking with families and prospects, is to gain information, not only to see where they are in the process, if they're a good fit, but you also can get good follow-up information. And I'll be honest, a pet peeve of mine is when I'm trying to buy something and taking my time and looking at different people, different companies, and you get the inevitable email like, "Hey, I'm just circling back with you," and then "Are you ready to buy yet?" And so that's one thing that when I get to coach sales professionals, it's very important to have these front-end conversations, because you find out what are some of the interest, what's going on in the lives of the prospects, of family members, because when you reach out to them and follow up, if you're communicating even with the family member, if they are into gardening, maybe you start off with, all this rain we've been having has probably been good for your garden, or if you know that the prospect has been maybe in and out of the hospital, you can ask about their condition, how they're doing, are they back home? It just gives you a lot more ammunition to have what I would call thoughtful follow-up and try to build the true relationship.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, is really understanding what their needs are and what they're going through. It could be, it could be a person that just lost a partner after 60 years of marriage, and there's pretty lot of depression there. And what do we do to get that person back to living a quality life again? And all those things play a huge role. So understanding needs in this sale, I think, is hugely important, and that's why I think questioning skills, those empathy skills, are huge, because I need to know what their needs are. I need to know what they're running into, so I can adapt my presentation to their needs and what's important to them, not just doing a generic type of presentation of my community or my home care company, but really adapting to their needs and what's important to them.
Right. And it kind of a thought that just occurred to me was we think of performing a predictive index on maybe the sales and the marketing manager of a community, so we understand more about them. But does this work the other way too? Is this good to maybe have the regional managers or the national sales managers or upstream, have them to complete the PI as well? So not only do they know how to communicate with their subordinates, but the subordinates may learn about how to communicate and what their managers are needing as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Roy. I think anybody in an organization that has an opportunity to complete the predictive index all it does is help them understand that person better and how to motivate with them and how to communicate. So, predictive index, it's a great tool. If I'm the manager, I understand, number one, am I making the right hire based upon their PI? But once they're on board, am I managing them? Am I coaching them? Am I communicating with them effectively? But at the same time, being transparent. If I'm the manager, my people know my PI. They know how to best communicate with me, how to best interact with me. And it's also great for peers, about to best work with somebody, how to best communicate with them. Some people are more voice communication, some people are more texting, but how do we best communicate with each other? And it really takes out, why somebody acts the way they do. You ever have been in a work relationship where you're frustrated and you're saying, why does this person act the way they do? Well, PI lets you know that. PI lets you know why people act the way they do. And knowing that behavior is hardwired in you. It's kind of like your eye color. It's kind of given to you. It's kind of like, how tall you are. It's kind of those things you really can't change. Behaviorally, we really can't change our behavior. We can adapt. We understand ourselves. We can adapt our behavior, but we really can't change it. Knowing that, how do we best work together and bring out each other's strengths to create a better team, not trying to change somebody or just being frustrated with somebody on how they act the way they do.
Yeah, and I think it's good to emphasize that while we've talked a lot about the hiring process and using the predictive index during that, it's also important for existing teams because I think it would not only help the communication, but it might also helping you to sharpen that communication in both directions.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And again, playing to each other's strengths, right? LeBron James is a great basketball player, but he's probably not a great scientist. Or Einstein's a great scientist, but probably was not a great basketball player. It doesn't make them bad. It just understands what strengths you bring to the party, and let's just play on those strengths to create the best team possible.
That's correct. Yeah, and that's all we're trying to do is to, not to get put anybody in a bad light or in a bad way, but it's just a tool that can benefit not only management but also the sales teams. And as we talk this through further, I would assume that it'd probably be good to get the whole community on board, at least the administration with like the executive director, the director of nursing, and also the sales team, because they all have to interact with each other daily, and so this would help them communicate at the community level very well with each other. And then there's so many moving parts with people moving in, people moving out, just all the fires that come up during the day in the life of a senior living community.
And really, what it really is, Roy, it's investment. Think about what is your most, in senior living, what is your most important, thing that you have, and that's your people, right? If you have great people, you're going to be successful. If you have great caregivers, you're going to be successful. If you have great nurses, you're going to be successful. You got to have a great sales team to be successful, a great executive director. And Predictive Index helps you predict that. So it's a really investment in your most important asset that you have is your people, to making sure that you're making your people decisions correctly, doing a better job of making sure you get the right people on the bus. But secondarily, making sure that once they're on the bus, that I'm engaging them, I'm motivating them, that they're bringing their best, and they do what they do best every day to create a different experience and great experience for you, the people living in your community or the people you're working with home care from that standpoint. So it's a tool to really make sure that you're getting the best people on the bus that fit what your community needs are behaviorally. And then once they're on, I'm doing a great job in terms of engaging them and working with them. I think Gallup did a survey a few years ago that 7 out of 10 American workers are not engaged in terms of what they do. They're not engaged in what they're doing on a daily basis. Predictive Index helps with better engagement, helps you understand what that person is going to bring behaviorally to your company, and then from there, how can I best engage with them to let them do what they do best every day. And when you do that, you're going to have more of an engaged employee, and at the end of the day, you get better results.
Yeah, and that statistic that you quoted it's unbelievable that we have employees walking around like zombies in companies that aren't engaged, and that also relates to the about the same number are passively seeking other jobs. They may not be actively looking every day, but if someone approached them with another offer, they would be willing to listen. And so here again, that relates back to the employee retention and how important it is to hang on to, our best players. So we talked a little bit about how it would help teams communicate and managers communicate both up and down the line. But let's say, I could put on my best suit, comb my hair, brush my teeth, come in and sit down in front of the hiring manager, and for 30 or 45 minutes I can talk a good game, and I can really have a good attitude. And you know what, I love seniors, I love selling, I love getting on the phone, making cold calls or following up. I could say all the right things, but I'm not that person. And so can Predictive Index kind of help not only weed out those skills, but also that attitude, because that's the one thing that I talk a little bit about as well, is that, when you hire, you really want to hire for attitude, because you can teach a lot of skills. And the other part of that is that, attitude is like a virus, and you have to look at people and think, do I want other people catching this attitude? So will the PI help on the attitude?
It won't be as much as the attitude as much as some of the other examples you use, Roy, in terms of empathy, in terms of follow-up, that type of thing. Attitude a lot of time is more we choose our attitude every day. We choose to get up and be positive today, or we choose to get up to be negative today. Those are more choices. But the one thing when we go back to attitude is, if I'm doing what I do best every day, I'm going to be more excited about my job. So to your point, when a person comes in the interview, if I have their predictive index in front of me, I understand behaviorally how they're hardwired, which allows me to ask behavioral-based questions to see if they've actually done these behaviors that we're looking for in the past, or can they do those? If it's follow-up, I'm asking questions of, give me examples of when you had a follow-up system, and your follow-up system that you've used in previous opportunities that you had in your career, or we need strong closing skills. Give me examples of how you close an indecisive client or prospect. So with having the predictive index, I can behaviorally interview somebody to really see if I can pull out the behaviors, if we're actually getting that person versus a person telling me everything that they can do. We can all talk as a game. Predictive index will kind of make you see if a person can really walk the talk.
Okay. And then, if you don't mind sharing just about how many of the PIs have been completed, because I think from our talk the other day that not only in general, but probably for the senior living industry, y'all have a very good baseline for the different positions. So when somebody does, in the hiring process, somebody does take the PI, y'all will know how they fit in with the high performers in those positions that have already taken the PI, correct?
Yeah, we work with a lot of assisted living companies. A lot of home care companies are our clients, so we have kind of a baseline of the different positions of what PI they would be looking for different positions. But again, we want to treat every company individualistic. So what we do is kind of a couple-step process. Number one is, with the PI, we have what we call a job assessment, which is the people that are in the hiring of that particular position, and we usually recommend 3 to 5 people that have skin in the game for that hire, fill out a job assessment, which is really going in and checking off the behaviors they think that they need for that role. And from that will PI always gives us a pattern in terms of what we're looking for. So that would give us a pattern from what the hiring managers think that they're looking for. And then if they have top producers, we would go in and do a talent analytic on their top producers to find out what do their top producers' PIs look like in terms of the behaviors they're bringing. And then we would compare that job assessment with people filled out with their top producers to look for consistencies. And then from there, agree on this is the behaviors that we're looking for a salesperson in that community, for a nurse in that community, for an executive director. We agree on, just like you agree on educational requirements, just like you agree on skill requirements, value requirements in terms of ethics and honesty. Now you want to agree on what behaviors you're looking for each role for that particular company, for each role that you have there, based upon doing the job assessment and looking at your top performers and looking for consistencies to get a better target in terms of who you want to hire for that role to get it right.
Okay. Well, Marty, we've covered a lot of ground today. I certainly do appreciate you taking time out of your day to come back and, talk more senior living and sales focused. Is there anything else that you'd like the audience to know about the PI or how the predictive index can help them and their teams before we go?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I think in senior living, in my experience, is I think where people make a lot of mistakes is they just hire other people's problems. There's a lot of a lot of turnover in the industry, and people kind of bounce around from company to company. And my experience has always been, if I can teach, especially in sales, I can teach somebody how to sell. Selling is a skill set. It takes some hard work to be really, really good at it, but I can teach somebody how to sell. My thought process is if I can get the behavior right, if I got the right behavior and right attitude and right ethics, if I got that right, passion for seniors, and I got the right behavior, I was going to be successful, and I have a lot of loyalty with that person because I'm teaching them how to sell. So my recommendation to you is, not get in that game where you're just hiring other people's problems and other people's people that are kind of bouncing around, but really get A talent by hiring the right behaviors and teaching them how to sell, teaching them how to do the job. And then I think you'll find a lot of success that way and have a lot of loyalty also when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point that sometimes we rely on a box that's checked that, oh, yeah, I work for XYZ Senior Living, and so I've got it looks like I have experience, but like you said, maybe I was just somebody else's trouble, where the PI, the predictive index, will help us get to the bottom of their skill set, and then we can teach them the nuances of the senior living industry that they need to know.
Yeah, because my thing, Roy, is, if I'm a top producer, I have all this equity built with my company. So if they're paying me fairly, I'm getting treated fairly, why would I ever want to leave? Because I have all the equity built in with this particular company, right? So generally speaking, when people are leaving, they're generally leaving because they're not performing where they should be. If they're, the only time I look at a top performer, if they're not being paid fairly or treated fairly, that's the only time I look at them. But for most cases, people are leaving because they're not cutting it with that company. That's why I would hire somebody, get the behaviors right, teach them how to sell, and then you'll not only have a great salesperson, but they'll still tend to be very loyal to you because you're the one that gave them the opportunity. You're the one that taught them how to sell.
Right. Good, all good points. Well, Marty, if you could tell the audience how that they could get a hold of you to get more information on the predictive index.
Yeah, if you wanted my email is M as in Marty, my last name Ramseck at PI Midlantic.com, or my telephone number is 949-545-8121. You can reach out either way to me or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you do that, I'd be more than happy to have you complete a predictive index. If you haven't completed one, it's a $200 value. That would, for listening to the podcast and connecting it with me, I would do that for no charge for you and kind of have you take it, which takes about 6 minutes, and then spend about 10 to 15 minutes with you going over your results and seeing how maybe it'll help you or your organization.
Okay, great, Marty. Thanks for making that offer to the audience, and I will also include your contact information in the show notes. So, again, we want to thank Marty for being our guest today, and thanks, audience, for listening to the Senior Living Sales and Marketing Podcast. Don't forget to download and rate our program. It will help others find us easier. And remember, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. The website is www.seniorlivingsalesandmarketing.com. You can sign up for a newsletter to stay up with the latest podcast whenever we put them out. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, wish you the most success in your business endeavors.